Reconvene the disciplinary hearing. It is 10:30. All right.
Okay, we'll start off with Trustee Gruss will render his opinion on what he's thinking, and what we're going to do this is each member is going to speak to Mr. Todd just on their findings and what they feel. So we'll start with Trustee Gruss.
Tom, it's probably appropriate for us to stand here.
Well, Gruss is talking, you don't want to stand.
It's not necessary. You don't
We always stand when the verdict comes in, so
I'm kidding.
take it like a man here.
This is several minutes.
Oh, well,
I was kidding.
Obviously, this has been a difficult evening. It's been a difficult situation. Before I pass judgment, I need to make a statement or two. Statement one, the facts of this case are not in dispute. Todd's accepted the fact in his letter that there are some missing meetings. That is not an issue there. Two, the authority of the fire chief to maintain discipline is not an issue either. Obviously, he needs to have authority to maintain discipline. That's not an issue here. The question of disciplining Thomas Todd is not an issue either. And yes, discipline is in order. But the issue before us tonight is the severity of the discipline, and as a secondary matter, the proper process for arriving at this point in the dismissal proceedings. Was this matter handled according to proper procedure? Well, I believe very strongly that punishment must fit the crime. I've said this before. This is a time-honored American principle. This isn't Russia. This isn't China. This is America. Punishment needs to fit the crime. Taking this into account, that Todd is a 12-year employee, and for 10 years of that period has been an exemplary firefighter. Does that not count for anything? His record has been stated. Considering the 10 years of good work, what is the responsibility of his employer, us, in the Michelle Township? And what's the responsibility of his boss, Fire Chief Peterson? What are our responsibility for the events that caused this problem in the 11th year? Chief Peterson has repeatedly told me about this fire family thing. I admit I'm hung up on this. How firefighters are always one. Hurrah, hurrah. Where was the fire family when Todd fell off the attendance wagon in 2009? I know Chief Bates, and bless his heart. But after 10 years of faithful service, this man suddenly stops coming to meetings. Was there not a red flag here? Did the chief ever care enough to call him and say, "Hey, Tom, we missed you. Sit down. Have a little counseling session"? We've been through that before. What about the assistant chief or the division chief? There are some other issues that went wrong in this process too. The lack of policy-required paperwork, the lack of employee performance evaluations, that's a policy, the lack of following departmental protocols and handling policy violations. How can we justify firing an employee for violating one policy when the department has violated several? Is one policy more important than the other? It seems so. And then there's the question of past disciplinary practices for offenses more serious than missing meetings. The department has been inconsistent in its handling of policy violations, so the question needs to be asked. Why are some firefighters who violated departmental policies let off scot-free, and others get hammered for a lesser policy, a lesser infraction? Well, this saga is over now. Todd has recanted. He's offered to attend meetings and be a good Michelle Township firefighter. Earlier this evening, I made the suggestion for probation, but it was ignored. The chief, you won this, Todd. You really have. You made a point. He's given up. He's not going to fight you anymore. You don't have to squash him. You can show compassion. But of course, I think the incident here is not about fair and equitable justice or misdeed. The issue is power. And who has that power? Thomas Todd challenged that power, so he's going to be made an example for all to see, for all to remember. There's no mercy here. 10 years of good service means nothing. The fire family Peterson talks about, nonsense, it's a myth. Well, Todd read a letter to the three of us in August requesting this hearing, and according to the Ohio Revised Code, the trustees sit in judgment of that request, and that's where we are tonight. Following that letter back in August, I telephoned Todd, was invited to come to his home, and we visited, and there was a follow-up call. There are some here tonight who are extremely agitated with my reactions, and they feel I violated something, although we're not quite sure what. My answer to them is this: I have a duty. I have an obligation when sitting in judgment of a person's job. And my decision will affect his family. And my decision will affect his career for the rest of his working life. I have an obligation, and I need to take the time. I need to make every effort. I need to do whatever's necessary to get the facts. And I need to know what happened, remembering that there are always two sides to every story. I do not take lightly my vote that can strip a man of his income and damage his career. Now, over the years, since I've been a trustee, I've taken some hostility from the firefighters here during my tenure, and I probably will get some more after tonight. But the message for you guys sitting out there is that, hey, Gress is not a rubber stamp trustee. Someday, you may be sitting in that same dock where Todd now sits. I want you to know that I'll give you the same diligence that I did of him. Due to the ramifications of what I've said here, the fact that there's a majority rules in this case, I intend to abstain on any vote on Thomas Todd's dismissal.
Trustee Gress, now that you've deliberated and participated and that you've spoken on the record, you're not able to abstain at this point. You need to
I'm not able to abstain. Then the answer is I would not accept any recommendation to dismiss Thomas Todd, and I further would offer the suggestion that he be placed on probation and return to active duty with a reprimand.
Finished? Okay. Lisa?
Okay, gross neglect of duty is more than mere neglect and occurs when such neglect of duty, either from the gravity of the case or the frequency of the instances, becomes so serious as to endanger or threaten the public welfare. Mr. Todd testified that he attended less than 50% of the required training sessions. Not only did he testify, but he entered that into writing to a letter to the trustees. Testimony from Chief Peterson reflected that Mr. Todd attended 11 out of 47 training sessions, or 23.4%. Mr. Todd's lack of attendance grossly violated the minimum training standard of 50% and created a potentially dangerous safety liability. Chief Peterson's testimony supported the importance of Nimishillen Township's training as applicable with our equipment that we have here in our township. Testimony via Mr. Burns also substantiated that while Mr. Todd has attended training at the City of Canton, their equipment is not the same as ours and would have no relevance on our training here in Nimishillen. Mr. Todd was also spoken to via other department heads, as reflected by Kenny Bates' testimony that he spoke to Mr. Todd about his lack of attendance. It's my decision and our opinion that based on the testimony provided, that Mr. Todd clearly violated the minimum training requirements and should be removed as a firefighter with New Michelin Township Fire Department.
Okay. My turn. Tom, there was a great effort here put here tonight to, I guess, paint you up to be a nice guy. And I see you as a good person. And you know what, to be honest with you, I've never met a firefighter who's not of high dignity. I mean, it's just doing the job, if you ask me. Mr. Jagnese was brought to the definition of gross neglect of duty. I feel the charge meets that. In the words
I
of
didn't hear you, Mike.
I feel that the charge fits the crime, or fits the actions, I guess. It says to establish gross neglect of duty, it should be established by frequency, quite a few times, and by importance to the general welfare of the public. I don't think I have to explain to you that training is important for that. So I do feel it meets the criteria. Through my investigation, I have found that we're dropping the ball in the handbook a little bit. We are. We got some work to do. The next question I have to ask myself was, did it disadvantage you? You as a person. I do believe in my heart that this was an act of civil disobedience on your part to a certain degree. You thought the trainings were nonsense, and you weren't going to attend them. That's the only thing I could arrive at. That you didn't feel that they were irrelevant. Unfortunately, you can't make that call. And putting everything together, I got to remember that almost 2 years ago when Chief Peterson came to me and said, to this board, and said, we are having problems with training. I'm going to make this policy that you meet the standard or termination. We told him we support him on that. And to be honest with you, I don't see anything that would say to me that you were put at a disadvantage. So therefore, I will vote in favor of dismissal.